Okay, council, it is 7:05, and today is August 20th, and I am calling this work session to order. We only have two items. The first item is receive a briefing on the city manager's submitted budget for fiscal year 2019 as required by the city's charter. And then after her presentation, we will have a discussion. City manager.
All right, Mayor and Council. I am so grateful today is here. I can't even begin to tell y'all. We quit worrying about this book. First of all, let me acknowledge that this is still a work in progress. We are about 97.5% there, and tomorrow we'll get the other 2.5% and give it to you tomorrow evening. I think that you'll be very pleased with the level of detail that you're getting this year in comparison to previous years. One of the items in our work plan is to submit our budget document for the distinguished budget presentation of the Government Finance Officer Association. And there are 26 objectives that must be met in a budget book in order to qualify for this award. So we have taken this opportunity to essentially restructure absolutely everything there is about this book in an effort to be open, transparent, and process the information differently. So what I want to do is to walk you through the book. And then I'm going to back up and we'll start with perspective about this next year, and then we'll work through the different funds. But I want you to have a sense of the information that you have available. As I indicated just a little while ago to the mayor, this is a work in progress, and so there are no page numbers today. There won't be page numbers tomorrow. Once we get your feedback tomorrow and some direction, if there's going to be a number of wholesale changes, we'll make those, and before you adopt the budget, you will have a book with all of the numbers in it. It will be bound with all the page numbers, so you will have a sense of where you're going. But this is a pretty significant budget and a lot of moving pieces. So one of the things, if you'll turn to the front cover, is it is intended to be very visual as a way to capture all that we do. I appreciate that budgets or numbers for people. I actually teach a class statewide to the Certified Public Managers Program, and I say to people, budgets really aren't about the numbers. They really should be about the programs, the services, and the results of what they bring to a community. So because a lot of people are intimidated by numbers, this is built to be kind of a pictorial, almost a magazine, if you will. There are a lot of highlights, so if you aren't interested in getting the details, if you'll just flip all the pages, you'll learn a lot about who we are and what we do. You'll see some fun pictures of staff in the community. But if you do like the numbers and you are interested in the detail, there's plenty of that as well. So I appreciate that when we put together a budget, sometimes you can get off in the weeds, and sometimes you just want to be that butterfly. So I hope it's to everybody. On the front page, I just want to highlight some of the cute pictures because it gives you a sense of some of our year in review. You got Sugar Shane being a Christmas elf, and I just love the joy on his face. That's what Christmas really is all about. We swore in Alan Borquest this year. Mr. McRae, who is a wonderful jazz guitarist, was playing in our Red, White, and U. I love this fireman down on the ground level interacting with our little children and teaching them to drop, roll and all that goes with that. We've got a cute little girl in a library program. We've got Public Works and July 4th. And I think that just in one essence with our new street signs gives you kind of a year in review literally on the front cover. So the first section is introduction. And in this introduction, when we're finally through, will be the mission statement, the city council, the executive team, the award when we actually win it, a table of contents, and a user guide. Clearly, there's no table of contents, and we're still working on the user guide. But you can see we start off with our mission, and then you flip, and there are pictures of City Council as well as the executive team, and it states really what our form of government is. And right off the bat, you get not only the policy team, but the operational team. And I'm so proud of the way we all collectively work together to do the things that the city of Bastrop requires. The next section is the overview section. This has the transmittal letter, community profile, and an org chart. And I will come back to my letter. It's a draft. It's the first part we'll talk about tonight. And then we'll highlight tomorrow the strategic aspects of this. The community profile has been updated. We used the Bastrop Economic Development Corporation's community profile. What I found with our other budget was we had a message, they had a message, somebody else had a message. So we're gonna be consistent in how we describe the city of Bastrop. If you'll keep turning through that section, we then get to the strategic vision. And this page, this section I will complete for tomorrow night, but it really is intended to have our work plan, objectives, and accomplishments. What you have in here are the goals and objectives from the comprehensive plan. I am preparing a cover sheet so that everybody knows what we've already accomplished, because we have a number of objectives in play or completed from the comprehensive plan. So you can turn through several pages of that, and you'll end up at the financial strategy. The financial strategy is really intended to give you a big picture of all of the funds on one sheet. The way this has been structured, there is an awful lot of detail in each one of the funds. So I don't spend much time explaining to you what's already talked about. So if there's any information about a specific fund, all of these are highlighted, and you will see that as we move through the book. The next page is an org chart that tells you where each fund, what type of fund it is. We have governmental funds, special revenue funds, permanent funds, debt funds, proprietary funds. And this is kind of a cheat sheet, because each fund, depending on how it is structured, determines how the fees are set, how the money's spent, and how that's accounted for. So this really is intended to just be a guide, if you will. The next section is BP&L, and what you see in each fund is a fund summary that highlights their mission statement. In this case, BP&L's mission is to provide safe, reliable electric service to the citizens of Bastrop in a cost-effective, efficient manner through careful maintenance and thoughtful capital improvements to the system. The next page, each fund is going to have a department description that gives you highlights about what this department does, what the org chart is, and all of the org charts are built differently this year. I took the people out of it because the people don't tell you what we do. And so what I attempted to do in each one of these divisions was give you a sense of the work that is accomplished in these divisions. And there's also highlighted the community partnerships as well as the staff liaisons, because I don't think people appreciate the amount of responsibility sometimes this one person has. And so it leaves you not necessarily understanding the complete picture. So BP&L does power distribution, system maintenance, and line extensions. So that gives you, again, a sense of the types of work that happens in BP&L. Each one of the funds will have a fund summary. There will be if you'll turn the page beyond the fund summary, there is a revenue summary that outlines the specific income that is generated for that fund. And then there are expenditure summaries. And so BPNL has one revenue source or one revenue page and one expenditure. We'll come back and spend some more time in this once we're through my update, but I've outlined the community support, the system studies, line extensions, and special projects that kind of highlight what happens in the BPNL fund. The next fund you'll continue with, if you'll keep flipping, is the general fund. Y'all don't need to stop and pay attention to BPNL, please. I'll come back to it. Keep flipping the page. When you get to the general fund, there is a lot more information in this than you've seen in the past. There's a general fund summary, and then there is an overview of the revenue. And essentially, it covers the revenue assumptions in great detail. It breaks down sales and use tax collection. It will outline the forecast, how it's allocated. It also talks about ad valorem tax and the forecast, what the appraisal process is, how the tax rate is set, and our history. And this is going to be the 5th year that the city of Bastrop will adopt the same tax rate. So the tax rate's not going up, but the process explains to you how that works. And then all of the other revenue sources are outlined with an explanation as to what the revenue is, like franchise and other taxes represents those revenues collected from utilities operating within the city's rights-of-way to conduct business, including Time Warner, AT&T, Bluebonnet, and CenterPoint Electric. And then it will show you what the budget is, show you what percentage of the total funds in general fund that is, and it will compare the total to not only the 2018 budget but projections and tell you whether it's increasing or decreasing. And so every one of the revenue sources in the general fund now has this information available to you. If you'll continue on in the general fund, there is an expenditure synopsis, and that is presented to you in 2 ways. One, by account category, and those are personnel, supplies and materials, maintenance and repairs, occupancy, contractual services, other charge, contingency, capital outlay, and transfer outs. And then the expenditures are also presented to you by function. And we have 4 functions: general government, public safety, development services, and community services. What we will give you tomorrow night are going to be 2 separate summaries. One is going to be an explanation of all of the base adjustments. So, for instance, if we have fuel's going to go up in every budget. So there will be just a simple summary sheet of all of the line items in the budget that went up because they're just routine costs of business. We bought a piece of software that now requires maintenance. Or in the case of this year, and I do want to stop and brag just a minute, our team is pretty amazing because we are going to be able to do some things this year because the cabinet went back and took a very abundant mindset to their budget. They told me that in years past, the mindset was if you didn't spend it, you didn't get it. And you didn't get to ask for it next year. I don't believe in that. I believe we ought to spend the money when we need it appropriately. And if we don't, then let's put it back in the fund and allocate it based on what we need this year. Because we all know in 12 months needs change. So they did that. And they absolutely went in and evaluated every line item. In some instances, I got back $35. In some instances, I got back $3,500. But they really did an amazing job. And they did that with the mindset that we're all in this together. And if we don't need it, we're going to trust that we can give it back. And if we need it in the future, we'll be able to get it again. And I think that's absolutely the way a good team ought to work. And so you'll see a lot of comments on the base adjustments that budgeted as needed. So they went back and evaluated, and that just means they gave some money back. There's also going to be a summary page of enhancements, and these are going to be things that we've added this year. So those will be 2 pages tomorrow that we'll give you. We're still summarizing that will be included in the general fund expenditure section that we're currently in. So you can anticipate that sheets tomorrow. General fund revenue is just a summary. And then much like BP&L, every department or division in the general fund is included. So legislative has a flow chart, goals and objectives and accomplishments, and we'll go through these page by page in just a little bit, talk about what all the organization has done. There is a fund summary and a personnel schedule that gives you total expenditures and then the personnel that is assigned to that division. And that has occurs for legislative, organizational, the city manager, and I hope you enjoy looking at all of the pictures, the city secretary, finance. Finance has finance administration and human resource. Finance administration and utility customer service, HR, IT. Filming and broadcasting, I want to note that the general fund portion of this budget is shown in this department, but the personnel is not shown, and the reason for that is that the general fund is transferring money for film and broadcasting as well as special events and reservations to the hotel occupancy tax fund as a transfer in, so that all of the things related to hospitality in downtown are shown in one place. The reason for that is that they work together as a team, and it's very difficult to break out accomplishments and objectives and all of that. So just know that everything that is general fund related in the hotel occupancy tax is covered by general fund. So we are not spending hotel occupancy tax money by putting these 2 divisions in that budget. But that just helps keep the tourism and the hospitality pieces together so we can talk about that collectively. The next section is the police department. Yes, it's the police department, and they have police administration, code enforcement and animal control, emergency management, criminal investigations, patrol, and crime prevention. And then we have a section for the fire department, municipal court, development services, contains engineering and development, as well as public works, as well as planning and zoning, my apologies. Public works contains administration, streets and drainage. We have changed the names of recreation because recreation is something that we outsource to the YMCA. So Victoria, that was assigned to recreation, is now being called special events and reservations. And I want to talk to you just a minute about the terminology. We are working really hard to de-cityfy, for a lack of a better expression, some of the functions that we do and give them a more private sector name so that people know what to do with the position. When you call a hotel, you make reservations. When you call to rent a car, you talk to reservations. When you call a hotel to book a room or rent a room for a convention, you talk to reservations. So if you want to rent the park pavilion, you call our reservationist. If you want to book a special event, you call our reservationist. If you want to book the convention center, you will call our reservationist. Now, Kathy's still going to go and recruit conventions, still going to work with the big business, but Victoria's going to take care of the paperwork. She's going to follow up and help Kathy book you next time. So this is going to help us streamline our processes, make sure that we're giving great customer service that we're dotting our I's, crossing our T's, and we just think that that will be helpful. It, too, is going to be shown in the hotel occupancy tax with hospitality in downtown. Also included in the public works is parks, as in park maintenance and building maintenance. We also have a section for the library. That concludes all of the information for the general fund that you have. The next fund is the hotel occupancy tax fund. This is a fund that tomorrow I will replace this section for you because I still owe you the words to the page and the items that are going to be highlighted in this fund. But what you do have is the hotel fund summary and the individual division pages, which are organizational, multimedia, special events and reservation, convention center, Main Street, BAIPP, and the arena. The next fund is the Innovations Fund. This fund, as y'all are aware, is where one-time money from excess fund balance from either the general fund or BP&L is deposited. And this is where we do all of the special projects. And so that will show you where the sources of money comes from. And the mayor specifically requested an innovation fund reconciliation. So there are multiple pages that list the projects from last year as well as what we're proposing next year. The reason that the money gets deposited here is a number of these projects are multi-year. We just can't get them done in a year. So the fund balance stays here until we have the bandwidth or the time for the project happens. So we'll come back just a little bit and talk about that. The water wastewater fund, I just want to call your attention to the first picture where their mission statement is. I think that's one of my favorite pictures. It shows a water leak, the rainbow, and they're getting wet trying to get the water line cut off. But the water wastewater fund has a summary. And this is one area where I've spent a lot of time with words on the page. As y'all are aware, we took a lot of, or quite a journey, if you will, about this fund, and we'll spend some time in just a little bit walking through that narrative. But there's also a water wastewater fund summary and individual pages for revenue, administration, distribution and collections, water production and treatment, your treatment plant, and your capital improvement program. The next section is capital improvement projects, and we're going to spend quite a bit of time on this section in just a little bit, but what this represents are what I'm going to call the must-dos. These projects are the things that you have identified through the year, and you've been abundantly clear that there are no options. We're going to do this. We can no longer kick the can down the street. And we have had numerous conversations about those projects. So I'm making a point to say this because in the Comprehensive Plan Appendix B, there is a section for scoring projects for inclusion in a capital improvement program. I hope in the near future we have projects that will allow us to score them. But right now, we don't have anything to score because everything we are doing must be done. It's beyond its extended life. There are no do-overs. So we'll talk about that, but every one of the projects that we've talked about has a page. And so if you will, just keep flipping through those sections because we're going to spend some time on that in the near future. The section following that is the Street Maintenance Fund. And this one I am just so proud to be able to provide to you, because I want to stop just a minute and say what a phenomenal job Trey Job and Curtis Hancock have done on the street maintenance. You received a presentation on the pavement condition index, and we had multiple public meetings about the pavement condition index. And if you will recall, Trey presented the fact that for the next 5 years, we need about $553,000 a year to really begin to get our streets maintained to a level where we can consistently keep the good streets good. And that's what you maintain, are the good streets. You rebuild the streets that you can't keep good. So one of the recommendations in the certificate of obligation sale that you've authorized for $4.7 million is the first 2 years of the street maintenance. It's about $1.1 million. And so in this section is year one, and then there is a map that you can pull out that shows what streets and the breakdown of year one, as well as year two, the street name, the PCI, and then the amount of work that's being done, and there's also a map for that. Now, year one, we feel confident in, and the reason we feel confident in it is maintenance of streets requires you to physically go out and inspect them. So Trey and Curtis have walked the streets that are recommended. Trey tried to help him understand the amount of work that was required. About, I guess, 3 weeks into this, Curtis calls him in a panic one day and he says, "We got to walk all these streets." And Trey said, "Hello, welcome to my world." So year one, they've walked. They've walked year two. But before we execute year two, they're going to go back and walk them again, because we all know that Mother Nature is not always kind to conditions of streets. If we have an unusual drought and we get 90 or 100 days of 100-plus degree heat, that has some extreme conditions on infrastructure. If we were to have a rainy season and we were to experience a ton of a ton of rain, that could have an impact on the infrastructure. So I just tell you that to tell you year one's rock solid, year two might change, but it's our best guess. And it was our way of communicating to the public that $1.1 million of street maintenance is not a blank check. It is intended to go to the maintenance of our streets the way it is intended. So we're excited about presenting that to you as well. The next section is debt. And there is a bond and debt summary that talks about our debt management policy, what our current bond ratings are. It talks about the INS portion of our tax rate. There is a page on the proposed 2018 Certificate of Obligation series that is staff's recommendation on the projects we'd like to see you include in the bond sale. And again, we're going to walk back through this book when we get familiar with it. There is a general fund debt service schedule. There is a water wastewater debt service schedule. We have 2 debt sales that still have money in them. So you will see a 2013 combination revenue and tax bonds, and there is about $1.3 million in this particular fund. And Tracy, this money is dedicated to Main Street?
This is Main Street and still has some
This is the Economic Development Corporation's portion of the Main Street Rehabilitation Program. And there is some additional money that the city's going to sell in the 2018 series that will fund the project in its entirety. The next page is the 2014 Certificate of Obligations that has $833,000 left in it. And Tracy, that is for?
This is all water and wastewater remodeling.
For those that can't hear Tracy, it's water and wastewater rehabilitation money that we're still working through those projects, and so it will be used. The remaining pages are actual debt schedules of bonds that have been sold in previous years. So what you will see is the series, and there is a year, 2005. So this particular series would have been sold in 2005. It was a $2.4 million series, and it will mature in February of 2025. So each one of the outstanding bond sales has a schedule, and that is included just for open and transparency purposes. So if you'll flip through the debt schedules, you'll get to other funds. And this is where we account for what I'm going to call specific funds that are for purposes, but there's not enough money there for it to be a standalone fund. Typically what drives that is not only the amount of money, but personnel. The Bastrop EDC, there is a revenue and a expenditure, because this is a pass-through. Bastrop Economic Development Corporation has its own board of directors, its own budget process. But because the sales tax comes through us, we show this fund as a balancing mechanism so we can account for all of the sales tax. Designated Fund 102 are all of the designated sources of revenue that have specific state law requirements on how they're spent. The red light camera money is here, court technology fee is here, juvenile diversion, which we are allowed to hire a juvenile case manager for. All of those types of specific money are in what we call this designated fund. The next fund is the Fairview Cemetery, and it has two funds. It has an operational fund and a permanent fund. The permanent fund only has $4,700. The permanent fund is intended to be the money that takes care of the cemetery as it ages. This is why we had an actuarial study funded as a part of the Innovation Fund, because we need to start doing some actuarial calculations so that when the cemetery is built out, that there is money to pay for the upkeep of the cemetery. And because we still have a lot of property left for plots, now is the time to figure out what we're going to need when and adjust the fees for including perpetual care.
I just wanted to clarify. So the fund balance in the permanent fund's like $348,000. So this is just the revenue that comes through it.
Well,
okay.
that's good.
I just wanted to clarify.
I've been stewing about that, thinking we're going to have to get busy about getting that study done.
Say that again.
It's actually on the summary page, but it's I think it's around $348,000 approximately.
But you can see that on the previous page, we spend about $93,000 a year. So that's only 4 years worth of upkeep. So we definitely need to be adjusting the amount of money allocated from the sale of a plot for perpetual care. The grant fund is where we receive all of the local, state, and federal agency monies. It might be CAPCOG money, it might be FEMA money, but if we get it from an external source that's a grant, we have to match it or not match it. You will find it in this fund. Hunters Crossing PID also has an individual fund, as well as our impact fees. The library board fund, that's where all of the gifts and donations that are generated from the library reside. And then we also have a park trail land dedication, and that fund is where we deposit money as development occurs. Sometimes rather than dedicate land, they write a check. And we really like the check because that allows us to invest money into our current system and upkeep and upgrade. So that is what that source of funding is. And then you will also see the Vehicle Equipment Replacement Fund. This is a fund we're not going to spend much time on this year, but I will tell you it's going to be in our work plan next year. Vehicles is something that is not fully funded, just like building maintenance is not fully funded and park maintenance is not fully funded. And we're just kind of having to eat this elephant one bite at a time. So this next year, we're going to work on that and begin to bring that forward and let you know what we need to do to begin to have those elements covered. The reason that I'm bringing this to your attention is that one of the expenses that occurs in the Vehicle Equipment Replacement Fund is the purchase of patrol vehicles. And that's the one piece of equipment that gets used a lot and needs to be maintained at a specific level. We were buying police cars way sooner than I was comfortable with. And Chief Altgeld agreed and has adjusted the years of useful life of a vehicle before it is replaced for the police department. They currently drive Tahoes. And so there are several styles of vehicles that are built for the police department. And so I have asked James to go out and investigate the options, see what works, what doesn't work, gas mileage, again, the entire cost of service. And he is going to put together a committee that will include members of his team, and they will be back sometime in the spring to make a presentation to you about what kind of fleet makes good sense from a maintenance standpoint and just a drivability for the police department. Then once we make a decision about that, we're going to revamp the Vehicle Equipment Fund, put updated prices in it, and then we'll bring that to you for future funding. Yes, sir. Sure.
When you say not fully funded, does that mean we need 10 vehicles and we put the money for the 10 vehicles in the budget? I don't understand.
Essentially, what a vehicle replacement fund is that you buy the vehicle and then you start putting a payment every year in that fund. So when the vehicle needs to be replaced, there's money in the fund to replace that. And we have not done that for every piece of equipment we have. So part of our fleet is in the Vehicle Equipment Replacement Fund and is funded for replacement. The rest of our fleet is not, and we purchased that through one-time money in the Innovation Fund. And so we need to put together a strategy so that critical equipment is maintained, because doing without it's not an option. We can't do our job. So this is a place where some of it has been accomplished, but there's still work to be done.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yes. The next section is reference. And this is where the annual budget adoption ordinance that you approve will be. The annual tax rate ordinance will be. Included in this is a list of boards and commissions. You will also see our financial policy. And just as a matter of practice, you adopt the financial policy when you adopt the budget, because it needs to be reviewed annually, and that is a great way and a great time for us to incorporate any changes that come from the budget, how you would like to account for that, and include that so that it never gets stale. It also includes utility rates, and there will be 2 changes to utility rates. Our financial policy requires us to pass through cost increase for utility services, and the solid waste charge will go up. It is tied to a consumer price index, and so contractually they are entitled to that increase. And so the solid waste charges are listed. The residential rate will be $16.05 effective 10/1. An additional cart will be $5.25, and the additional recycling bin will be $2.10. The wastewater service charges will be going up, but we'll talk more about that when we discuss the wastewater fund. The next section is statistical data. And so this is a new addition to the budget, and it includes our location, a demographic snapshot, sales tax per capita, and you can see that that has significantly increased since 2010. The general fund revenue growth by sales tax, ad valorem, and other. It lists the top 10 Bastrop employers, the top 10 property taxpayers. Our average taxable home value actually increased 7.9% this year, and our average taxable home value is $194,715. Our breakdown of tax valuation is about split. It's 56% commercial, 44% residential. That's an awesome mix. You don't want it one-sided or the other, so to have something about 50-50 is a really good blend of valuation. And then the last section is acronyms, glossary, and index. We use a lot of acronyms. We work hard at not doing it, but it's just we do it so often that we don't even think about it. So we've made a list of the things that we reference. So if you ever wonder, I wonder what that means, I hope you find it on the acronym list. And then we also have provided a glossary of terms. And the reason for that is that governmental accounting and government in general is very different than anything most people have a frame of reference for. So this will be a reference guide that when we make a statement and it's got a term you're not familiar with, you hopefully will be able to find it in the glossary. So that is an overview of the budget book. And if y'all have any questions about form, I'm happy to answer it at this time. If not, I'll ask you to turn back to the front and we'll go over it section by section.
So, going back to the very first section, introduction, we have the mission statement. I was just wondering if there was a reason we didn't put the vision statement in.
Yes, it's going to be in the strategic section that I'm updating for you tomorrow. So, I have given you a draft budget letter, and I will finish it tomorrow, and the one that I bring you tomorrow evening will not be marked draft. But what I wanted to focus on this evening is the context of how we put this budget together as staff. This year, the cabinet is James Altgeld, our Director of Public Safety, Chief of Police, Sarah O'Brien, who is our Director of Hospitality and Development, Tanya Cantrell, that is our Director of HR, Jerry Pallady, I don't see Jerry, there he is right there. He is our Director of Engineering and Development, Tracy Waldron, who is our Chief Financial Officer, and Trey Job, who is our Managing Director of Public Works and Leisure Services. So there's 6 members on the cabinet. And we had a retreat, and it was a very long 2.5 days. We started meeting about 7:30 in the morning, and one night we finished about 11:15, and I think the next night it was about 11:30 or 11:45. So we really worked hard, and the purpose of the retreat really was for us to reflect on the recent past, or I guess actually I think the way I worded it is we spent time visiting the recent past, reflecting on where we are today, and planning for tomorrow. And it was a really powerful 3 days because, as y'all are well aware, we have a lot of challenges. we have a lot of opportunities, and we have a lot of things in play. And so we all agree that we've had a tremendous year, and we believe that we are beginning to create a culture of achievement. And so I wanted to take just a minute, and I'm purposely going to read the workload indicators, because all we talk about are the things that are broke, or the things that need to be done. We rarely talk about the things that we do day in, day out, as a matter of course, with 135 people. And so, as Trey likes to say, the toilets continue to flow and the water continued to run. CID processed 1,043 cases. Police investigated 773 accidents. Troy answered 543 animal control calls and 669 code enforcement calls. And the reason that I made a point to break out the org charts by job descriptions rather than people, because one person for animal control and code enforcement really doesn't give you an idea of the amount of work Troy does. So, again, he does a lot of work. Police responded to 5,400 dispatch calls for service. They initiated 4,175 calls for service. They received 142 pounds of drugs in a drug take-back program, conducted 1,359 hours of emergency management training. Fire responded to 414 calls. Library circulated 145,827 items. IT responded to 964 help desk tickets. We held the May election, hosted 12 Farm Street Opries, processed 378 job applications, interviewed 35 applicants, posted 43 council agendas, televised 41 council meetings, plus economic development, plus planning and zoning, prepared staff reports and presentations for 100 plus resolutions and 18 ordinances, opened 1,194 utility accounts, created almost 2,100 utility work orders, filed 13 insurance claims, prepared 20 financial reports, processed 100 new vendors, processed 3,400 payments, welcomed almost 116,000 visitors to the library, processed 26 payrolls with an average of 162 employees each. I met quarterly with all employees. We hosted the Red, White, and U dance, sold 69 cemetery plots, filed 45 cemetery deeds, performed 114 bank reconciliations, processed 6 projects with FEMA, processed 552 journal entries, processed 42,393 payments, issued 916 commercial and residential permits, totaling $507,000 in revenue. Worked, and this is one I want you to circle. We worked over 2,150 hours of permitted and non-permitted special events. That's more than one person, and staff does that on the weekend with all the other things they have to do. Cleaned 11 facilities, which totals 115,000 square feet on a routine basis. Answered countless emails, telephone calls, assisted countless citizens and visitors. We received less than 25 compensation claims with less than 5 lost time claims, and processed 1,800 IVR payments. None of that's sexy, but if we missed any of that, you'd hear about it. That's the stuff that makes your phone ring, that we do, that never gets talked about in an agenda item, never gets talked about in the work plan. This is just the expected items day in and day out, that as long as we do them, you're unaware that they are occurring. Now, we did those daily workloads, and then we had the following work plan accomplishments. Updated the council rules of procedure, hosted the first annual Board and Commission Volunteer Appreciation Banquet, hosted the first annual Volunteer Fair. Tanya completed her PIO, Public Information Officer certification. Andreas updated all servers operating systems, hosted teen and junior police academies. We moved the senior into the senior the shelter once the shelter got built. Hired a new city attorney, hired a new prosecutor, drafted a new subdivision ordinance, reconstructed Childress, developed year 1 and year 2 of the street maintenance plan, conducted ground truthing at the cemetery, hosted a council infrastructure tour, maintained Main Street accreditation, conducted an cultural arts master plan. We all love the Christmas lights. That seems so far away. Conducted an operational assessment of Willow Water Plant, developed a capital improvement program for drainage, developed a capital improvement program for the water system, completed drilling of Well J, revised the budget document, conducted a new council candidate orientation, updated the boards and commission application and appointment process. We also hosted a new council orientation, received an unmodified audit with no findings, hired a full-time system administrator for IT, added video storage to the police department, participated in National Night Out. We had a grant for smoke detectors for seniors. You hired new associate judges. We updated the historic landmark ordinance, installed new street signs, completed the design of a skate park. We are conducting quarterly street striping, revised the catastrophic sick leave policy, conducted an RFQ for the new financial advisor, conducted a CIP survey, began coding the downtown DNA for the 2019 code revisions, completed Shiloh Bridge thanks to Mel Hamner, conducted operational assessment of the Bob Bryant Park water plant, developed capital improvement program for quality of life projects, developed capital improvement program for wastewater systems, purchasing water rights from Excess Ranch post-bankruptcy, conducted joint meetings with boards and commissions, updated on-call callback policy, updated 25 job descriptions, implemented NeoGov software, the Tyler Technology RMS CAD and municipal court software. We relocated 93 chickens and roosters to date, built and opened an emergency shelter, received a grant for fire alarms in the hearing impaired. We prepared RFQs for professional services, received 49 submittals, interviewed 12 firms, and are now hiring those consultants by project. Updated alcohol beverage ordinance, completed an RFP for concrete work, completed Delgado Park Phase 1, which will happen by 9:30. We worked as volunteers at the County Household Hazardous Waste event, completed the Pavement Condition Index study, started records management program, conducted smoke testing for infill and infiltration, approved the Adopt a Street program. It now has 12 participants. We're negotiating a partnership with Aqua, conducted an operational assessment on wastewater treatment plant 1 and 2, developed a capital improvement program for transportation projects, prepared a certificate of obligation sale of $4.7 million, and conducted the PID strategic audit and subsequent cleanup. Those are the work plan items.
You left something out. Every month you have lunch or breakfast with each council person.
That is correct. Yes, ma'am. So I've given you the daily workload indicators. I've given you the work plan items. And then we have to address the unknown items that come our way daily that you can't anticipate, which included the small business revolution, where we placed second in a national competition. We opened the Emergency Operations Center for Hurricane Harvey, manned it 24 hours a day for 3 days, and we're still addressing some of the FEMA grants for projects that need to be completed. You've implemented a drainage moratorium and associated opportunities, workforce housing opportunity with the Preserve at Hunter's Crossing, numerous development opportunities on a weekly basis, Pine Forest Unit 6 litigation, the Court of Appeals, and ongoing communications that are associated with that. And those are just the high ones. The point of this is not to capture everything we do, but to give you an impressive list of what happens with 135 people every day. So a culture of achievement truly cannot occur without a fantastic team or cast of members, as we should say. There have been numerous internal promotions this year, as well as professional achievements through certifications. We've promoted Margaret Snibble. Thank you. Say that again. Oh, okay. I will to assistant Margaret to assistant finance director. That's right. We promoted Christina Davis to customer service coordinator, promoted Sarah O'Brien to hospitality and downtown director, promoted Clint Nagy to assistant police chief. David Juarez received his Class C water distribution certification. Dale Hamilton received his Masterpiece certification. Sergio received his Class C groundwater certification. We promoted Curtis Hancock to the assistant public works director, promoted Colin Guerrera to chief storyteller and resident artist, promoted James Altgelt to director of public safety and the police chief, promoted Ryan Preston to sergeant, promoted Darren Glenn to detective, and he received his Masterpiece officer certification, promoted Heather Ambrose to public works technician, promoted Cody Reynolds to foreman. He received his Class C water distribution certification, promoted Jennifer Bills to interim planning director, promoted Christopher Chavez to sergeant, promoted Vicky Stefnick to sergeant. John DuBose received his Master Peace Officer certification, and we promoted Charles Hastings to operator. Now, this one I am the most proud of. As if all of these accomplishments were not enough, there will be zero health insurance increase next year. I have probably never worked for an organization that didn't have a health insurance increase. Normally you get the book of business 5 or 6% standard increase, but there is no increase. We added Compass Medical Concierge Service as an employee benefit in fiscal year 2018, and it cost us a whopping $7,600. Well, the purpose of Compass is to help employees get the best prices on medical tests, prescriptions, and generally to have an advocate to address medical billing issues. And year one participation rate has been about 35%. And they have, by working through Compass, saved $100,000 in health claims. That is a 13-to-1 return on investment. You don't get any better than that. And I think, given our size, that $100,000 savings is the reason we didn't get a health insurance. They're working hard. They've got huge accomplishments, clearly staying well, working smart. And so I think that you'll find the culture of achievement is one that will continue. We have great morale. People have a lot of fun. They work hard. They play hard. They feel appreciated. And we certainly could not do what we do without them. And so, if you don't mind, can we give everybody a round of applause? So, that's what we focused on as a part of our recent past. We are clearly very proud of the accomplishments in fiscal year 2018. But we also recognize that we have maxed out the existing capacity of our organization. There is just no more gooey in the tube to squeeze out. There are really two ways to achieve additional capacity. First, additional employees are desperately needed as we manage the growth and needs of this community. The second way is we have identified several processes that need to be overhauled in order for us to work smarter, not harder. And we also need to remove the inconsistencies that constantly cause customer service dilemmas and lost credibility for staff. It really doesn't matter how hard we work to provide good customer service for somebody. Before they get completely through the process, we stub our toes somewhere. Part of that is our codes are convoluted. Part of that is our records are everywhere. And we might stumble over one piece of information we need, discover another piece in a couple of weeks, and it's just really a very, very difficult environment to work in. Most of us need work-life balance to keep burnout from becoming a morale buster. And there is clearly a lot of work to be completed in the next several years. And this is a time to punctuate we're running a marathon, not a sprint. The Cabinet and I are also aware of several significant threats in our future. The first is namely the governor's 2.5% tax cap legislation, should that be approved. And the second is the 500,000 square foot mixed-use development at State Highway 130 and State Highway 71. And when we were really analyzing what that looked like, we began to really appreciate the fact that every choice has a consequence. And we all know that, but when you got plenty of money, you got plenty of time, do-overs are okay. But we are approaching a time in our future where if the governor's cap is passed and the development at 130 and 71 has the impact we think, there won't be a lot of money in our future. So everything we do in the next couple of years needs to be thoughtful, needs to be right, and not cheap. And so I appreciate the commitment that Council has taken with the capital improvement projects that we've presented. You've looked at that asset and evaluated it based on the useful life of the asset, not just what's the cheapest entry point into fixing that asset. And I think that's phenomenally important because we're going to be investing in some infrastructure in the next 4 years that we really do need to see to its end of its useful life. And we also recognize that oversight of all new development needs to be built to appropriately geographically sensitive codes to ensure long-term financial sustainability, which y'all have really embraced and are working to ensure we leave our future better than we found it. So let's start with the process piece first. So what staff would like to suggest to Council is that we hit the pause button on the 5-year organizational work plan that you helped create last year, and allow us an opportunity to focus on what we have identified as some game changers. And game changers are items that, when fully implemented, will truly change the way we function and change the amount of organizational capacity that we have to give to the projects in our future. And that is phenomenally important. If we don't change some of our processes, it really won't matter how many people we get, we'll still be doing stupid. And we've got to stop doing stupid. So the identified game changers are: we need to complete our records management transition to Laserfish. You've heard me talk several times about we have records in 4 or 5 different places. And we ask the most basic questions, and it takes staff anywhere from 15 minutes to 2 days sometimes to find an answer. And in some instances, they just come back and tell me, I don't know. We can't find it. So we got to fix that. We need to revise our new ordinance and fees for special events. We donate a lot of in-kind service on top of the amount of money that you donate or support to these festivals. And you heard me comment that more than 2,100 hours is dedicated to special events. one full-time person is 2,080 hours. So essentially, we dedicate more than one person in this organization to all of the special events. But that's not just one person. It's the police chief, it's Sarah, it's Victoria, it's Public Works, whether it's the parks or water wastewater guys or the street guys or the drainage guys. It's Trey. It's all of us being pulled to manage that. And so we need to revise our ordinance and make some choices about how we staff those so we have some capacity. It is a process that we recognize is going to be impactful to the community. So it's a journey we want to take over this next year. And so Sarah and James are going to be coordinating that effort to bring to the table. We need to complete all of the capital improvement projects, and we're going to talk about not only the quality of life, but the drainage projects, the water, the sewer, and the transportation projects that have been identified that need to be fixed. And Jerry and Trey are going to be in charge of managing that process. The piece to this that we don't spend a lot of time talking about is the impact it has on our community while construction happens. So every one of the streets that we touch with street maintenance, or every project that we build, we have to communicate to the public that it's happening, how they're going to be inconvenienced. If we are impacting a residential street, we need to communicate to the citizens where their garbage is going to be picked up. Is mail service going to be disturbed? If we're digging up your front yard, will it look like your front yard when we leave? All of those are questions that generate calls. So we have to have a process in place and communicate. So all of this work has a similar communication strategy that has to go with it. A lot of work there. One of the things that came out of the retreat was the proverbial aha moment. And that is, this past year, we put together a wastewater maintenance plan because that's what the comprehensive plan indicated was important. We put together a water maintenance plan, which is what the comprehensive plan said was important. We put together a street maintenance program. All of those maintenance programs require us to buy things. And when you buy things in a government, you have to buy things according to state law. And it is a long, laborious process. And so if the same people that are going to be responsible for doing the work are responsible for buying the stuff, we won't get anything done. And that's been part of the process with Trey about not being able to get things done. I would say to him, why are we not getting this done? Because it has to go out for bid. Well, somebody has to write the RFQ. Somebody has to write the bid document. And the process goes on and on and on. So we came to understand that there's capacity that has to happen relative to being able to do all of this. And it's not just building stuff. It's buying things and communicating things. So hence the need for a public works purchasing process that currently doesn't exist. We've never bought things in the quantity that we're fixing to buy things in public works. So it's a huge, huge issue. We need data. We don't track data. So we can't prove how much we do and how successful we are because we don't keep up with data. So we've got to have systems in place. The mayor asked a very simple question. Should have been a simple question, but it's so not simple, she still doesn't have an answer for it. And the question was, how many platted lots do we have in this town? And we still can't tell her. We're still working on that. But that's a very basic something we ought to be able to answer, and we can't. So we need to develop processes so we're capturing important data day in and day out, so we can fundamentally change the way we do business based on information and not just our gut. It also would be nice if we could anticipate problems before they fall out of the sky in our lap, and data helps you anticipate that. We recognize that we also need to develop a 5-year financial forecast of all revenues and expenditures. Because our finance team is so small, the cabinet is going to be assigned a revenue that they're going to track. And a great example is sales tax. Sales tax seems like a fairly benign something to be able to track. You go out and you look at the consumer confidence, and you look at the sales tax number for the state, and that ought to be good enough. Well, it would be, except we have a 2,600 square mile retail trade area. And every one of those communities in that trade area that gets a Walmart or Home Depot has a reason to quit coming to Bastrop. And so we need to not wake up one day and be surprised when our sales tax drops off. We need to be anticipating that. So that's an example of it's going to take some effort to do that. And then the last thing that we need to make sure of is that we're ensuring quality communications to prevent the perception of too much planning and not enough executing. Because we have done a lot of planning this last year and a half to get our house in order to make smart decisions. So we need to do a great job of communicating all that we are executing. So what we'd like to do is hit the pause button and really go internal, get our house in order. And the things that we will add to the work plan are going to be items that are going to be included in this year's budget. The second component to adding capacity is people. And so recognizing that additional employees are needed because we're pushed way too thin to manage the growth and challenges we have, we are proposing additional personnel in this budget. 2 police officers to increase minimum manning on the night shift. Right now, if we have vacation or sick time, there are opportunities where we're vulnerable and we need to fix that. So by having 2 officers, that ensures that the night shift has somebody additional on both of those shifts. You've heard the chief talk about the Michael Morton Act that has created a tremendous amount of documentation and paperwork to get a case to court. And so we need to increase our part-time records clerk to full-time. We also need to increase our part-time hours for a 3rd paid daytime firefighter position. Much like the night shift and police department, we have 2 people currently during the day during the fire department, which sounds great, except they too take vacation, they too get sick. So that 3rd person makes sure that we have capacity so that we at least have a couple of people to answer the calls. We need an additional part-time receptionist office assistant in the city manager's office to greet customers and to provide clerical assistance. Our current receptionist and office assistant is working with Tracy Chavez on our records management. They are scanning records all day long, trying to get them into Laserfish so that we can really, again, focus on becoming paperless and knowing where our records are and getting them into a system where we can sort them appropriately. We need an additional planner for planning and zoning. The challenge that we've got with the documentation that's in 4 different places with planning and zoning is you can't hire an intern or somebody that doesn't understand planning and zoning to go through the records, know what to scan, and more importantly, know what to call it and where to put it. So there would be nothing worse than scanning all of this document, getting it in Laserfish, and never being able to find it. At least now we can go to a box and find it, but oh my gosh, could you imagine on the cloud not being able to find it? So we need a planner to fix our records challenge. A great example of why that's important, because I know people are going, really? You need to be able to file plats in a way that you can go back and look when something's been vacated on a plat. Trey and I were working on a project not too long ago, and there was a question as to whether something had been vacated on a plat, and he had to go back to the 1890s to find where the vacation actually occurred. So when you're a city that goes back to 1832, there are a lot of historical records we need to be able to sort and find. Council has requested that we add, I forgot one.
Building inspector, what we are finding is that our third-party inspection service is not doing the level of inspections to the standards that we need, and we are having to go back and re-inspect on some things. And so we're going to add a building inspector. You will see that it has significantly reduced the amount of money that we're spending to be able to do that in-house. We have interviewed several candidates this past week that were very good. The building official conference happened the same time that we went to the retreat. Curtis Hancock went to that conference in Amarillo, did a lot of networking to encourage that profession to find Bastrop interesting and to get people to apply for our building official and building inspection position. Council indicated that they would like to see a digital media manager to focus on social media messaging and to respond to customers, and so that position is included and would be in the hospitality and downtown department. Council indicated that you wanted a position that focused on the city calendar, that would act as an ombudsman to citizen concerns and communicate those concerns to council. And so when we were evaluating the needs of the organization, we determined that we need a procurement specialist to handle the public works purchasing process. We also need somebody to be a contract compliance officer for all of the projects that we're going to be doing in the capital improvement project. We need to track all of the submittals. And it dawned on us that probably 98% of all the calls you're likely to get are going to be from all of the construction we're likely to do. So it makes sense for this person to be that ombudsman, and when we start getting calls, to communicate to council that this issue's out here, here's what we're doing so that you're never caught off guard, and to first and foremost manage the calendar, because the mayor and I are not going to talk about the calendar in fiscal year 2019. So as I've said to Trey and Jerry, they're going to do the calendar first and everything else second. So we think that that would be a good need for the organization, and it would be stationed in admin and would be shared with council, but would be under the direction of Trey and Jerry. And then we also desperately need an assistant Main Street director. What we find is Sarah is so key and so strategic that she's in meetings, and every meeting we go to generates work. And we need a quote-unquote doer position, somebody that does the work that's generated from the meetings. And so the thing that has made me most nervous is Sarah went on vacation, a much-deserved vacation for 2 weeks this summer. And it was glaring, the vacuum that is created when Sarah is not here. Colin has a full-time job. Kathy has a full-time job. Becca has a full-time job. Vicki has a full-time job. And there's no bandwidth for anybody to pick up somebody that can outwork most of us 2 to 1. And so we desperately need an assistant Main Street director to help manage the Main Street program, recognizing that we're going to be doing quite a bit of work on Main Street, and appreciate the amount of communication that's going to be needed there. So that's the highlights of the positions that we are requesting in this year's budget. And then there clearly is going to be more items that will come from the proposed budget for our work plan, but the highlights are the building Bastrop to complete the code revisions phase 1 and 2 that y'all have enacted and kicked off, recognizing that we need to fundamentally change the way we develop in this community. We're going to be talking about all the capital improvement projects. They will need to be in our work plan. The street maintenance program. There is a skate park design, and we have put funding in the budget in the Innovations Fund for phase 1 to build a skate park, so that would be important. A component in order for us to ensure fiscal sustainability is to do a fiscal impact analysis. model so that we can move forward with that, and that's included in the budget, as well as a remodel for City Hall and the studio in the parking lot. So before we get into the particulars, I want to pause just a moment, but that's kind of the framework, the mindset that we've been in as we've built this budget, and hope that this gives you and the community some perspective of where we are, the challenges we face, and the work ahead of us. So before I move forward, is there any comments or questions on the perspective? I'll take that as a no. So with that, if you would flip in your budget to the BP&L fund, it's going to be you're going to move through strategic vision, you're going to move through financial strategy, and then you're going to get to BP&L. BP&L and crew does a phenomenal job. I say this whether Mr. Irvin is here or not. Irwin, I always get confused. Mr. Irwin's here or not. I love the fact that they have very few accomplishments and very few objectives. And they don't need a bunch because they have squarely identified the ones that matter most. They maintain system reliability of 99.996%. That's just about as close to perfection as you can get. They complete, with the help of LCRA, a system study. They do it in 5-year increments. It's their equivalent of their 5-year CIP. To Curtis, this is non-negotiable. And he's right. Because they have consistently done this every year, the system works. It never goes out. If it does, it's not off for more than 10 minutes. They'll do a takedown outage, and the most it's out, unless it's weather-related, is about 2 hours. There isn't another utility anywhere that could say that. So they do an amazing job. They complete all work orders within the same day, and most of the time within a couple of hours of receipt. So nothing sexy about what they do or what's in their budget. They just take care of business, and it's an amazing thing. BP&L does support the community support, and you received presentations from the community, I believe the last meeting in July. And so I have outlined staff recommendations for funding. The Austin Habitat for Humanities requested $10,000, and we are proposing $10,000. That is a program that goes 100% to the citizens of Bastrop, and they fix houses in need of repair. The Bastrop County Child Welfare Board requested $2,500, and I have not funded this for this reason. The way their program is set up, it does not meet our community guidelines. They write checks to CPS officers, and they know nothing about the child that they're helping. We don't know whether they live in Bastrop, they came from North Carolina, and we have no way to verify what they buy. So this is a very important cause that really is better suited in a different philanthropic way. So that was not funded. The Bastrop County Emergency Food Pantry requested the same amount of financing that they received last year. And so we have funded the request and then rounded up to the nearest hundreds to make the math easier on this. So we will continue to partner with the food pantry to do the Nibbles program, which is the backpack program that we do for 100 school children at BISD every year. The Bastrop County Women's Shelter, which is the Family Crisis Center, the Bastrop Pregnancy Resource Center, the Children's Advocacy Center, Combined Community Action, and the Court-Appointed Special Advocate of Bastrop County all said the same thing, and that is the number of customers that they're helping has significantly increased. So we increased their funding 15% above what we funded last year and rounded up to the nearest 100. So all of those organizations saw a 15% increase over funding last year. Feed the Need and In the Streets, Hands Up High Ministry, we increased their funding from last year by $500 and then rounded up to the nearest 100. And then Literacy Volunteers of Bastrop asked for the same amount of money that we funded last year. They do amazing work teaching people to read and helping them with their GED changes lives forever. So they do amazing work. So Mayor and Council, those are staff's recommendation for community support.
I want to thank you for considering the Bastrop County Welfare Board, and we're going to just look at getting all those funds privately. I think that was the right decision, and I love what they're doing. And even when I said that in my mind, I'm thinking this is a private cause, so I'm sorry to throw you into a spin for that, but so I appreciate it. But I think that was a good call.
Well, thank you, and I appreciate that. We thought about it and stewed on it, but at the end of the day, we just can't manage your requirements. And I forgot the Boys and Girls Club, Mayor.
Yeah.
They are a new submittal, and we funded them at $2,500. The mayor had an opportunity to meet with a representative from the Boys and Girls Club, as well as Terry Moore with the YMCA, and I think she was able to bridge some effective opportunities for partnership in the future. And we'll take this on a case-by-case basis. If they do what they've committed to the mayor, they will do.
Yeah, I want to clarify that a little bit. It wasn't just a person. We have too many I met with the CEO of the Boys and Girls Club, and specifically what the $2,500 is going to go for is utilizing the van that they have to move kids in the city of Bastrop around to functions, and they have committed to partner with both the YMCA and BISD, and they're already having those conversations about getting kids between the school district and that kind of thing. So we agreed to the half of the amount that they had asked for. They've already committed to the partnership meetings, and then they'll come back fully understanding what the expectation is for next year. But I was encouraged by the partnership that they talked to. And then I also wanted to make a comment on the Child Welfare Board, and that is specifically one of the things that they mentioned was trying to get Christmas gifts for the kids in the system. And I know that there are several organizations in the community that do Christmas gift donations, and so I wanted to make sure that we, through our community support, just hook them up with those people, because I think that's a good way to answer it. There are very generous people in the community, and we can make those gifts available and make sure if there's no point in one organization having leftover Christmas gifts that they're saving for next year or for birthdays or whatever, if they can be distributed at the same time. So I think there's some partnership there that could address this.
Another item that is funded in BPNL are the system study improvements I mentioned just a moment ago that come from the LCRA study. There have been, bless you, there have been 2 projects identified that Curtis and his team will work on. The first is rebuilding the northern portion of the tap line, which is about 2,200 feet near the intersection of Loop 150 and Perkins. And it will end near Hospital Drive. And that project will cost about $118,000. The second project is rebuilding the southern portion of the tap line near the intersection of Loop 150 and Perkins along SQ and across to Perkins Street, which is about 1,700 feet. And the estimated cost of that is $126,000. Fiscal year 2019 is the 5th year of the current study we have. LCRA will study the system this next year and build the next 5 years. And so when we build the fiscal year 2020 budget, that will be year one of the next 5-year plan. Another revenue source that is in BP&L that is significantly higher this year than in years past is due to line extensions. Line extensions are projected to increase about 163%, and that really is attributed to the construction of the Piney Creek subdivision, phase 1 and 2. If you'll recall, we entered into a development agreement that allowed KB Homes to finance their line extensions in 2 payments. Both payments have been received. That development agreement is completed, and Curtis and his team are in the process of installing the line extensions to that subdivision. There are also transfers out, and they're called special projects. And so the special projects total about $683,000. The first one is Christmas lights. We did that last year, spent about half of what was budgeted. Have gone back out and had a conversation at the last council meeting about Christmas lights. There's going to be a transfer to the Innovation Fund of about $453,000. That's going to fund the skate park. It's also going to fund phase 2 of the codes. Phase 2 of the code updates are going to be the design manual, bringing our 2009 International Building, Fire, Electrical codes up to the 2018 version. It's also funds the Patriotic Festival, the Bastrop Homecoming and Rodeo, and the Juneteenth celebration. That money is transferred out of BP&L, and it resides in the hospitality and downtown budget, and we will talk at length about that fund tomorrow night. There are 3 organizations that in the past, I'm sorry? Okay, that's all right. There are 3 organizations that in the past have been a part of the Community Support Project program. And we have taken them out of that program because they are partners. And they're partners because they augment staff with the programs they offer. We have a contractual relationship with Keep Bastrop County Beautiful. If you will remember, we contracted with them last year to build an Adopt a Street program because we need assistance picking up trash and augmenting trash being gone when we mow, for lack of a better term. If we have an illegal dump, we need somebody to help go out and do that. They have done an amazing job with this program. They've already got 12 streets adopted. Trey's just got to find some bandwidth to get the signs out, but they are doing a bang-up job. The Bastrop County long-term recovery is key to our emergency management response. We aren't going to count on the Red Cross. We saw that in a situation like Hurricane Harvey, there's just not enough of the Red Cross to go around, and communities need to be able to sustain themselves internally. So the Bastrop County long-term recovery team does that for us. They were a part of the emergency management operations when we did unified command with the county. They do train with us, and so they will have a contract with us, and they are housed in the police emergency management budget. And then the YMCA we count on to do our recreational programming. We'll talk about this tomorrow night, but in addition to the programs that we have offered in the past, they are adding some additional programs, including tennis, that we were not able to take care of this year. So they're going to, I think, do movies in the park and really up their game on recreational programming, because that's not bandwidth that we have, and they're good at it. So we need to continue to do that. But we'll talk about that tomorrow at the hotel fund.
So
Yes, ma'am.
I just want you to talk about something a little bit more, and that is, so with the long-term recovery team, that's really like that's a private partnership, right, with the city. I really like that we do that, because I think that's one thing that you're really good at, is identifying what we're good at and where to go and get something to help us, partnering. And I appreciate that.
Well, the Bastrop County Long-Term Recovery Team has been fundamental since, I think, the complex fire. And the relationships that they have, the amount of one-on-one interaction they can have with folks in their time of need is just tremendous, and you just can't put a price tag on it. So we just need to let them help us when we need that. So, Mayor and Council, that really summarizes the activities in BP&L. Are there any questions about BP&L at this point? There is really nothing exciting in the general fund. Most of the projects beyond the reoccurring staff that we've talked about, one-time money will be in the Innovations Fund, and we'll spend some time talking about that. I do want to talk about some of the increases that we are seeing in our revenue. Sales tax is increasing 3.9%, which will generate about $184,000 in additional revenue. Last year, you will recall, we budgeted flat. The reason for that was in 2016, staff felt like they'd been pretty aggressive, and we almost didn't meet it, the budget projections in 2017, and we didn't go above existing revenue until February of this year. For the first 3 or 4 months, we were actually below projections. And so I'm thinking, well, flat was a good call. But a lot's happened since February. We're seeing a very robust economy, not only statewide, but on a national level. The consumer confidence index is high. Nothing on the horizon to suggest otherwise. So we certainly believe that sales tax will increase more than 3.9%, but we budget on a conservative level. And so we feel like this is a way to capture increase without putting ourselves in a bind where I sweat the numbers every month. So we'll see a 3.9% increase in sales tax. We saw a 5.3% increase in ad valorem taxes. We anticipate that this type of growth will continue. The city issued 135 new construction permits in fiscal year 2018. Of the 135 permits, 56% were new residential and 44% were new commercial. The villages at Hunter's Crossing and the Preserve at Hunter's Crossing, both multifamily apartments, are under construction. Pecan Park and Piney Creek subdivisions have sections under construction, as well as sections that new homes are being sold, new lots are being sold. So we recognize that there's also a number of opportunities for infill development in North Bastrop. So any construction that was completed after January 1st of 2018 will be on future tax rolls. So there's nothing in our future that suggests that we won't continue to see really nice increases in property tax valuations. To put this into perspective, if the governor's property tax cap was 2.5%, you'd only get half of what we got this year. Well, that adds up pretty quick. So if we grow, 5% every year and you only get half of it, you pretty much can see long term where that will be an impact. The caveat is they'll tell you, well, you'll get 100% the first year it goes on. Okay, well, property tax continues to increase every year. So this is one we're watching and we'll continue to stew about, worry about. I think a testament to the reputation that our mayor has in the region, she has been asked by Bennett Sandlin, who is the president of TML, to serve on the TML's resolution committee, which is the committee that drafts the legislation that TML supports and as well as fights in the legislature. So we appreciate Mayor Schrader's ability to be on the ground floor in Austin and fight that legislation.
May I ask a question, please? So, assuming, well, they want to take everything over the 2.5, what is it that they want to do with that, the state?
I don't believe that Governor Abbott has shared his plans. One could make the assumption that it might be needed in public education, but that is purely a guess.
So it's a secret.
I wouldn't presume to assume what Governor Abbott has planned for that. And we need to be extremely clear that there is not currently proposed legislation. There's discussions, and we anticipate it, but we are not in the session yet. Next Thursday, I'll be attending the, actually, I guess that's this Thursday. They run together quickly. I'll be attending the TML Municipal Policy Summit, where they're going to go over all of the items, and I'll know more after that. But until we are in session, we don't know exactly what they're proposing.
As I mentioned earlier, there are a number of revenue sources that we identify and talk about. So unless there is specific questions, I would just ask that you review the general fund. And if there are specific questions that you'd like answered, we'll be happy to do that. Tomorrow evening, we will have the two sheets that I referenced, the base adjustments as well as the enhancements, and we will be able to go over quickly in much more detail what's going to be increasing or decreasing in the general fund to give you some perspective. So if there's no additional questions, I would like to move beyond the general fund to the innovation fund, because that's really where the crux of next year's projects are going to be covered. As I indicated, the mayor specifically requested an innovation fund reconciliation because this is year 2 of the innovation fund. And so this is the second year that we're going to make a loan payment back to BPNL. If you'll recall, we financed the purchase of the RMS CAD system from BPNL, and we always charge market rate, just like if they had invested their money. So we're making year 2 of that payment. The State Park Trail design, you see that we budgeted $60,000 last year, and we added $166,000 to it, just because the design cost went up. That is not unreasonable. When you add those two numbers together, that's about $220,000. Typically, design is about 20% the cost of the project, and given the grade and the challenge with drainage and integrating the trail along State Highway 21, I think all of us probably knew $60,000 wasn't going to get it done. So now the engineering of that trail is appropriately funded. We will continue to fund server replacements out of Innovation Fund. This is the second year. All of our servers are getting close to the end of their useful life, and we need to replace them. Andreas is making a very calculated choice to begin to stagger our servers. They were bought all at one time. That just means they all go out at one time, and they're expensive. So he's working to replace a few every year so that we can get in a routine where we just replace a couple every year, and the amount of money that we do that with stays the same. The only thing that remains for Delgado Park is the parking lot. That was budgeted last year. what we've been waiting on is the request for proposals from the concrete contractor who's also going to be doing the sidewalks. At the next Tuesday meeting, a week from tomorrow night, you will have a contract to award that proposal to a contractor, and the very first project they're going to do is Delgado Park. So we anticipate that the parking lot will be done by the end of September, but we probably won't get him paid until the 1st of October, hence why we moved the money to next year.
So that's literally just, it was budgeted last year, not spent, and you're just sliding it over
That's
to
it.
this year.
That's
Okay.
right. And it's possible we'll get him paid this year, but if not, he'll be paid October. The PCI study was conducted in 2018, and part of what you'll be adopting with this budget is the outcome of that study. We're doing something with it, and as I mentioned, Trey and Curtis have put together years 1 and 2 of the building or the street maintenance. The fire department staff, 49,000 of the third position will be paid for by the general fund, and the remaining 82,000 will come out of the innovation fund. The mowing contract that we did this year, year 2, is also in the innovation fund. We designed the skate park this year, and in September you will get a presentation by Burdett Consulting that will actually show you the design that they've done for the skate park. It had a lot of public engagement, and they will be here to walk you through that proposal.
Did you mean the skip cart?
Oh, I didn't mean to, but I did, didn't I? But I'll let...
So it's not a complete design, but it's a schematic with a probable cost, and then we'll have to go back.
On
and,
the skate park? We're
Correct.
back. Okay, hang
Yeah.
on.
The CART funding will occur this year, and we need to be supportive of CARTs again, just due to a couple of things. One, we are designing the bus terminal at Spring and Main. And we were going to do that in conjunction with some park upgrades. But now that council is interested in moving forward with the Main Street rehabilitation project, we put all of that on hold so that we don't get out in front of something. So we're going to be meeting with MWM Design to get all of that in a box. But Sarah is going to be bringing the interlocal agreement with CARTS in September for this year, and then we will turn around and get this program better, because we need to be working with Dave Marsh about routes, and we just flat ran out of bandwidth, but we've been talking to CARTS about adding a second route here in Bastrop so that we can pass what they call the ice cream test. And so Sarah will be bringing that forward in September, and we'll do it again next year.
What can you just briefly? What is that second route?
Essentially, what we need to do is identify, and it's going to require some involvement with our community partners. We need to involve where the bus needs to stop. What are the community resources that need to be involved in the route? And then it's my understanding that there is somebody at CARTS that is very good statistically that can map it out by minute. And then we've also talked to them about working and being available on some key weekends when we have a lot of traffic. But the only way CARTS can do that is if they publish that on their schedule a year in advance. And so we have to, again, have data that proves which ones would be beneficial. And staff this year has been tracking some key information, which we'll share with you when we talk about special events, so that we can talk to CARTS about being available on those weekends when we have a lot of traffic, and negotiate some additional funding for CARTS in partnership so that they can provide that level of transportation we desperately need. So that's what would be involved. But it requires a bandwidth that we just flat hadn't had this year.
And that's the interlocal agreement that was referenced in last year's budget?
Yes.
And then skipping on the skate park, Trey, you're saying the reason it was budgeted 35 and we only spent 18 was because they did a schematic. They didn't do a detailed design. Is that what you were saying?
That's correct.
NeoGov is software that we need to essentially make our onboarding process of new employees paperless, so you will physically be able to fill out an application online, upload all of your attachments, and it will be routed electronically throughout the system. Currently, all of the applications come in. We have to make copies. It's a very difficult process. Vote link system. This is the sound and voting for the council chambers. The sound piece will be installed in September. Part of the challenge is that y'all are literally meeting 2 and 3 meetings a week now. And we need a 2 to 3 week block where y'all are not here. And so we're shooting.
We would like that too. Yeah.
We are shooting for September, but it's possible that if some additional meetings get added, we'll have to kick it down the street. But Andreas has met with some sound engineers and has gotten it worked out where we really think it will be all that in a bag of chips. And then once the sound is implemented, then we will address the voting piece. But we're going to make sure the sound works and not complicate this by having too many softwares interacting and none of it work and nobody's on first, nobody's on second. So the most important piece is y'all want the sound fixed. We're going to fix that and know it's fixed, and then we will deal with the voting electronically.
So the 52,000 was, as you referred to it, all that in a bag of chips. There was a lot of things included in the 52, and we're spending 15. We hope this year if we can get it finished before. Did you mean to? Why isn't the balance forwarded?
He doesn't need it. Go ahead.
We're using PEG funds to buy the building because it's appropriate. The public education.
We can't hear you, and we don't know what you're talking about.
PEG funds are public education and governmental fees that are assessed because we have the Bastrop television network. And PEG fees are a specific fee that are generated for specific things. And sound is important not only in this building, but for the sound quality for folks at home who often complain that they can't hear well. So we're going to do that. But I will tell you that I think he's been able to do all of that, and it's not costing as much as we think.
Is there then, can we pay the $15,247 out of the PEG funds?
No, that's the part that didn't qualify.
No, the reason we're using the PEG, they're designated funds, and since all of your council meetings are live streamed, and so we're able to use that money to do this process and still fall within the legal qualifications of the fund.
This is where I'd like you to just smile and say, "Good job, Tracy. It was a behind whipping to get to this point, ma'am. Please." Okay. It's been a battle on interpretation of that fund. Thank you. We purchased budget software. It's called InBudget, and InBudget is really going to be a good tool for us in years to come. But the first year is always complicated, because you have to get all of your information inputted, balanced out. And so next year, Tracy will just be able to upload all of the information that's already in there. So if there's a budget request that didn't get funded, it's still there. If you put all of your information and explained, what all the line items are so that I have a sense of what it is, it's still there. But it's painful the first year. And so this has been an exercise in what not to do. And we've had some coaching opportunities and some life lessons. And what is the most important date in your future next year?
June 3rd.
Yes. We will not be building, June 3rd, we will not be building a budget on the day I am presenting it to you. We are going to have it done by June 3rd. So when I get it, it's going to be a strategic document, not we're still moving numbers around at 4:30 on the day I'm supposed to give it to you. So
that budget software is not included in the innovation fund from last year's budget, but I know you guys had some extra money, so it had to have been one of our
yes,
budget amendments that we did throughout the year.
yes, yes.
Okay. But it's already, it's paid, it's done, and there's nothing to
yes,
bring forward.
That's correct.
Okay.
Professional services, we have allocated $155,000, and those are for unknown consulting firms that we don't know we need because we don't have the projects yet. And a great example is this. Right now, at the corner of 304 and 71, we have 3 projects being built. And the way our current ordinance is written, each one of them addresses drainage individually. And so we need a drainage engineer to look at all 3 models and make sure that one is not inadvertently creating a problem for the other one. And we'll manage how all of the infrastructure comes together because some of Agnes is on some of their property, Agnes is on some others, and there's just a ton of moving parts. We didn't know last year that development, well, we knew one of them was going to happen, but we didn't know that the other one was going to come about. So that's a great example of we have opportunities when development walks in the door every week and says we're interested in Bastrop, we're going to bring these houses or this project, and then it creates opportunities for us. And so this money will allow us to manage our business under the premise of we're going to ensure it's built right for the useful life of the infrastructure and that it functions correctly. So if we don't need it, we won't spend it. But if we do, we have it. There are some drainage grants in North Bastrop. Well, let me say this a different way. We have some grant money for wastewater in North Bastrop that we showed you on the infrastructure tour that's going to not only fix the wastewater but replace the water lines, rehabilitate the streets, and there's going to need to be some drainage work done in order for the streets to work. This $40,000 takes care of the drainage portion of that rehabilitation project in North Bastrop.
It includes wastewater.
Wastewater is a grant, so it's not the Innovation Fund. The water portion of that is in the water CIP, in the Water Wastewater Fund. The street rehabilitation is in the Certificate of Obligation series that we're passing. So this is the only piece that didn't have a funding source. The code updates for phase 1 that includes public engagement. So it's Simple City Design, it's Bowie and Company, it is I think that's right. So that's about $310,500, and that's going to be the zoning ordinance and the sign code, I believe, that will be done in that. The second code update, which is phase 2, which will be rewriting all of the design manuals, updating to the 2018 International Code Series, which is building code, fire code, electrical code, plumbing code, new forms, and staff training. And by new forms, all of it will hopefully be online. Will be $153,825. So by this time next year, we should have that side of our house in awesome order. And then in order to determine fiscal sustainability of future development, we need to have a fiscal impact analysis model built, and we're working with a company that has several cities across the state that are going to go in and participate with us on that, which is a great use of another partnership. We also talked back in April about the need for a fire feasibility study. We need to evaluate fire. What is the right choice for us going forward? Is it volunteer? Is it part-time, full-time? Is it full-time? Is it ESD? We need to have a plan so that we can evaluate long-term how we're going to manage that process. What do we need to start looking at? What are the triggers if we keep it to start doing different? So we just need a roadmap, if you will. We've also budgeted $20,000 in public relations for the unforeseen event. We don't know what it is, that we might need public relations assistance. We don't need it. It'll still be here, but you know, every day's a new opportunity. So we have it in the event we need to use it. There's $250,000 allocated for phase 1 of the skate park. There's $300,000 here for the remodel of City Hall and a studio, and I failed to note in the explanation that this is a loan from BP&L. In future years, our payment will be about $65,000, and we will pay them back over 5 years, and that includes market interest. But with the addition of staff and the inefficiencies of the way the P&Z interacts with the public, we desperately need conference room space. I mean, every day it's a juggling act. We need a plan review space. We need to consolidate access so that we can give thoughtful answers. One of the things that we've recognized, Sarah has spent the summer over here in this building, and there is a lot of synergy that happens when we're not spread all over the countryside. So we would like for Sarah, Kathy, and the Becca to be over here because it makes sense with the studio and all of the activities that are going on. There's very little that we do that does not impact Sarah, and we don't need it to be an afterthought. The mayor will tell you we do a lot of walking around, holding meetings in the workrooms and things like that. And it's more convenient when we have needs and we're all together. We need some additional offices. We're crowded. It's not efficient. So one of the architectural firms that we interviewed is working on a floor plan to help us with layout. And once we get a layout that we think is smart and we can afford, we will present it to you. And we won't spend this money until you see it and say, yep, this is the way it is. But we've earmarked it because if we get the positions, we don't have a place. And if we add more people at the studio, we need to make some improvements because that building is not really designed to do much more than what it's doing now.
So is it true that there's portions of City Hall that just haven't been finished out?
That's right. It was.
So we've anticipated this, and
yes,
now
ma'am.
You're going to implement that, right?
That is correct. GovSpend license is a purchasing module that makes it much easier for us to do purchasing than we're currently doing, and everybody that does procurement would have access to it. The storage appliance for City Hall, if any of us had to pick our favorite, this would be it. The mayor is nodding because there are days that our server just chugs and there's not enough bullets and sledgehammers to put it out of its misery. And it just you think you could save and it shuts down at Crater. It's just painful. So we're going to take it from 12 terabytes to 48 terabytes. Andrea swears that we're going to love the server when he's done. We hope he's right because today is an example of when it's just falling apart. What was that? Yes, sir. We also have a replacement schedule for computers, a zero-turn mower. We need to continue to fund Trapper Dan. He and Troy have, as I've said, captured 93 roosters and chickens, and we made the commitment that we will continue to do that next year. There is money to replace 16 of the 44 self-contained breathing apparatus bottles in the fire department. Makerspace furniture is a specific piece of furniture for our 3D printer, which is a program that the library is using and doing that's very innovative and growing in popularity. We need to replace the slides at Bob Bryant for $11,000. That's a life safety issue. Just as a point of interest, we have a responsibility to children, and we waive essentially our immunity when we don't, because we have a responsibility to them because they cannot read. So when it comes to kids and playground equipment, it needs to be top shelf.
So I just want to bring something else up, and I know everybody's really busy, but when you bring that up, this is, to me, this is very, very important, and that is a fence around Joel Hodges Park.
Yes.
And we've talked about this, and I just know it hasn't happened, but that stresses me out so bad, because, you sit on those benches and your kids are there and the road's right there. So you don't have to answer. I just wanted to bring it up again because I know it's something we need to do.
They'll be installing the generator there on the 27th of this month, and then they'll install the fence. But that'll be the last part of the project for the shelter. So it'll be completed.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah. Public Works needs a replacement trailer for $7,000. One of the things, we have done a tremendous amount of work on emergency management. Living in a county where we've had 4 or 5 FEMA declared disasters, it is not a question of if, it is only a question of when. We've analyzed our ability to communicate, and years ago when cell phones became popular and cheap, cities got away from radios, and that's great as long as the cell phones work. But when the cell phones go down, there's no ability to communicate. So we need to go back old school, and we need to get some VHF radios because we have antennas and repeaters, and we can communicate with each other. So we are going to be buying radios so when the world comes to an end, we can communicate. We need a work order system for IT. We need a new utility vehicle for the parks with all the trails and special events we have. They need that vehicle. We need a replacement vehicle in Public Works. There's money for additional licenses with Laserfish. One of the things that Laserfish has, and we had a demo this year that we figured out, is there's some work processes that will automate a lot of our forms and our processes, and everybody with signature authority has to have a license. So that's what this does, is helps us automate some of our processes. Next year, we are looking at a Wi-Fi upgrade. We have 34 Wi-Fi points, and they're 9 years old, past the end of the useful life. So in fiscal year 20, we are already talking about what we need, as well as Encode version 10. We're on version 8, and you can't get too far behind before you begin to pay dividends for that, and we don't need to get behind. So in 20, there's also a John Deere backhoe, painting the interior of the library, and a new service truck. So any questions on the Innovation Fund? Mayor, it's 9:15. Would you like to continue and do the Water Wastewater Fund, or would you like to pick this up tomorrow evening there?
I think we need to break one way or the other. You guys want to go tomorrow, or you want to go a little bit longer tonight?
I would like to go tomorrow.
Mr. Ennis?
We've got the Water Wastewater Fund. We have the capital improvement projects. We have street maintenance. We have the hotel occupancy fund. And we just need to talk about the certificate of obligation debt issuance. But the debt issuance, the CIP, and the street maintenance are just basically one conversation.
What had you planned on getting through tonight?
I would like to get through the wastewater fund, but it's tied to the CIP, so we get through it tomorrow. I don't think with what's left it's too much to cover, because there won't be anything in it y'all have not already discussed, anticipated, or instructed me to solve. So I can't imagine that there will be any surprises. The new things were in the general fund that we've talked about and the innovation fund. So if you don't have any questions about that, then what you'll get tomorrow night are things you have given me some direction on what to do with.
And tomorrow night's meeting starts at 6:30, so we're starting a little bit early. Councilmember Jones has suggested that this is enough for tonight. Is anyone opposed to that?
Anybody want to give me any feedback at this point? You like where we're going? Don't like where we're going? Too much information? Not enough information? I know it's coming at you kind of cold. Is there something that you thought you'd hear that you didn't? Anything? I tried to take good notes, and y'all have been fairly clear in your direction.
Well, I think that, and I have to agree with what you said at the beginning of the meeting, which is it doesn't matter how many people we have or what we do if what we're doing is stupid. And so what I'm seeing here is that we're making it not stupid. And so I'm impressed. It's all stuff we've talked about, and this is, in my opinion, this is kind of what you're really, really good at. So I'm not surprised, but I'm very impressed. So.
Council, anybody else? Councilmember Peterson?
I just want to say that we're headed in the right direction. Thank you very much.
Councilmember Ennis?
Takes me a while to assimilate things. If we've got proposed revenue of $763,000, we're going to spend $2 million or $2,200,000. I'm just looking at the fund description.
But Councilmember Ennis, you might note that some of that is loan payments, and so it's shown as a total, but then that'll be loan payments that are paid back.
Never mind. Thanks.
But that's not all of it, but that's.
You have to look at the transfers coming in. Like at the end of this year, we're transferring into it in order to spend next year.
So let me clarify that so we leave you with good information. We manage the general fund and BP&L differently, okay? So the transfer to the innovation from, let me say this right, the transfer to the innovation fund from the general fund happens on 9/30. So we will transfer excess fund balance in this year's budget from the general fund. The transfer from BP&L happens on October 1st, next fiscal year. So when you look at the amounts, the fiscal year 2018 projected column is important because that's when we transfer the one-time money that's excess out of this year's fund into the innovation fund to be used next year, because the innovation fund is just one-time sources of money. So by the end of this year, we have some sense of our carryover, and that's transferred before Tracy closes out our books this year. Does that make sense? And that's the discrepancy.
I'll sit down with Tracy.
Okay.
Thanks.
One, and I mean, it's a lot of information, and we're seeing it for the first time, but one of the areas that I didn't see what I thought I was looking for, and I'm not saying that it's not in the verbiage, I just haven't got there yet, is in the goals and objectives. It's hard for me to tell. I recognize them from the comprehensive plan, and I can see that you've pulled that verbiage, but it's hard for me to look at it and say, these are done, these are changed.
That's the section I haven't finished that
Thank
we're
you.
going to have tomorrow evening.
Okay, I felt like I don't.
There were no numbers to that, so I saved it because I felt like the budget, y'all would want to see the numbers, so we tried to get all of the numbers to you tonight.
Okay.
But then we will go back, or I'll go back tomorrow, and I'll complete that. I've got a couple of pages that will have pretty charts on it, so it'll be very easy to see, and there'll be a summary sheet of where we are relative to what we've done and what this budget will do relative to the comp plan.
I just want to, and I know you and I have talked about this, but for all of council and I think we're all on the same page, but I'm certainly interested in comments. That comprehensive plan, which is Bastrop 2036, although it's a document that we put a whole lot of work into it, things change. And so I want to make sure that you realize that I believe council is open to, if there are things that were goals that made sense back when we wrote the plan, but for whatever reason no longer make sense, we aren't interested in doing it just because 2 years ago we said we were going to do it. So I think it's more important to keep that document updated and know where we're going, because that's our guiding light. So that I appreciate you saying this section's not done, and that makes sense why I was like, ooh, I'm not getting what I was looking for.
Yes, ma'am. And what I found when I was putting that together is that a number of the objectives have been met, just not the way the document said. So I will reiterate what I believe to be the intent statements from the objectives, and then we'll tell you how they've been addressed.
Yeah, and I'm completely fine. If the objective's been met, we don't have to go back and document how we did it. I just want to be able to say, this was the objective. There were 8 things we thought we were going to do it. We did 6 complete. I don't care. The objective is done. And we need to be able to put some verbiage behind considered complete on such and such date, or some way of documenting why we considered the objective being complete.
To your point of updates, and we certainly won't do it this year, but in either fiscal year 20 or 21, I suspect that the code revisions that we're going to be doing this year will change how some of the objectives are implemented and where we go with it. So it's probably a good idea that we put it in our work plan and we do a retreat and we go back and really put some policy perspective, because I'm delighted that it was intended to last 20 years, but it won't take 20 years to implement that. And so then we'll need to talk about, now that we've done all of this, where are we going, and then what is it likely to look like? So to your point, we don't get too far out and have a gap. We're building some really good momentum and making some very strategic decisions, and we, to your point, need to stay focused on that.
And one of the areas that gets talked about in the community is the CIP, and that's a confusing conversation for some folks. And the survey that we did, I'm glad that we did it and we got some input on that, but I also want us to, knowing, because I've already looked at the number, and council, if you didn't see it, you should look at the CIP number because it will make your head explode. But knowing that, I want us to document now that I don't think we will be doing a CIP survey next.
No,
we are so, to your point, on the critical things of water, wastewater, drainage, and streets. And so I don't want us to have a document that says we're going to ask for citizen input on this kind of ice cream topping or this kind of ice cream topping. When we don't have any money for the top, we're trying to make sure the toilet's flush.
And it's unfortunate that the conversation that we had about that survey is not remembered, because the purpose of the CIP survey this year was nothing more than a gut check. And if you'll recall, we talked about we were getting our house in order. And the purpose of that survey was just to give our citizens an opportunity to say what's on your mind. And they did that. We didn't give any preordained perspective. And if you'll recall, we weren't surprised by a thing that came from that CIP survey. That's what we hoped. What I didn't want is for us to get out and spend all of this and not be aware of something that was critical, that if we just asked, somebody would have said, well, if you'd asked, we'd have told you. So we asked, and I'm delighted that by asking, nobody pointed anything out that y'all sitting at this dais were surprised by. So that says we're doing the right things. It was nothing more than a gut check. Because tomorrow night, when we do publicly talk about your head exploding, we wouldn't want to miss something and be spending all of this and still believe that there's some huge critical pieces out there. So I rest easy knowing that we gave the community an opportunity to engage. Those that had an interest did, and we're not surprised. So it says we're moving along and we're listening, and we have a really good perspective and handle on what's important to the community. And so to your point, we won't need to do that again.
Right. And again, just need to make sure that the comp plan is updated that same way. And if we're doing just a survey touch point or a citizen touch point, then maybe that's the new thing that we put in the comp plan, that every other year we do a citizen touch point or citizen feedback or something like that. Because I think we got into a little bit of mixing terms and what people thought, and I feel like part of that was force fitting into what was outlined in the comprehensive plan, and we tried to make that work. And just like we don't want staff to work stupid, council doesn't want to work stupid either. So we need to, that's just something that we might look at and make a revision to. Okay. Councilmember Ennis, I feel like you were going to say something. No. Okay. All right. So it is 9:25. I think we've taken care of item 2A and 2B because we've discussed as we've gone along. And so I would like to call us adjourned at 9:26, and council, we will see you tomorrow night at 6:30. Are we allowed to take our books home, City Manager?
Yes, you are.
Motion
Bring
to
your
adjourn.
books back, though. Bring your books
Yes,
back.
please do bring them back.